Well, good afternoon and good morning, everyone. I'm Frank Days, Vice President of Marketing at Correlsense. You've joined us for our webinar this afternoon, Show Me the Money, Connecting Performance Engineering to Real Business Results. Thank you again and welcome. Before we jump into the presentation, I just wanted to introduce our speaker today, Walter Kuketz. He is a Senior Vice President and CTO at Collaborative Consulting, a consulting practice that deals with a wide variety of IT issues, and one of them most particularly is around performance engineering. I just wanted to thank Walter for joining us today because I learned this morning that a large number of his team is out on the golf course today, and he had to miss that to be here with us presenting.
Looking forward to it. Always ready to talk about performance engineering.
Great. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we get going today. This presentation will last around 30 minutes. I know we had it booked for an hour, but we'll try to keep it on the earlier side so you get some free time back on the back side of the hour. We will have an interactive Q&A at the end if people are interested in. Also, we'll be posting the slides tomorrow on the website realusermonitoring.com. We can let you know about that. And finally, please do enjoy. If you do have questions along the way, please feel free to enter those questions into the chat window, and we'll try to answer them as we see them. So what are we going to talk about today? First of all, we're going to kick it off by Walter's going to get into the details of performance engineering challenges, then get into what I think is the meat of the presentation, which is how do we align our IT performance engineering initiatives with specific business initiatives, and also use it as a way to improve the way we communicate IT value with line of business managers. And finally, we'll tie up the end of it with some new approaches to performance engineering, as well as new ways to model business transactions that can help you improve your overall communication and performance of IT projects. With that, I'd like to pass the microphone over to Walter.
All right. Thanks, Frank. So going into the challenges that we see from performance engineering today, there are a number of them for those of us in the community. So we listed a few here. Highly distributed applications, pretty much the norm these days. We have complex and integrated systems. We have highly distributed teams and people across time zones, both for the business and for development, and for, of course, the performance engineering teams. The architectures and the technology continues to evolve, so we need to continue to adapt our performance practices to that. And of course, now with the new changes in user behavior and user patterns, we've got mobile devices coming in everywhere, and the new flash traffic events for retail websites and others. These make it difficult for us for designing service level agreements when you're building your system. You can have, for instance, a service that you might have to build for an SLA. However, you may not be sure who's going to use that service or how many of them are going to use that service. So how will you scale that? For highly distributed applications, they can pose a challenge for our performance team. How can you simulate a test in a highly distributed environment? What options do you have? And if the testing environment is not close to production, what real value can you get out of that? With the distributed teams, that gets to troubleshooting across the production environment. And where do you find your key developers if you have to do production rescue? And then, of course, the changing applications, we have more opportunity for slow to appear within our user experience. And introducing mobile devices, more use of software as a service, and products. And our challenges continue across the enterprise. Many large enterprises have large releases, monthly or quarterly releases, where they're just bringing out new functionality or new features across the enterprise. And coupled with that, you have project-based challenges where the project itself may or may not be in alignment with the enterprise release schedule. This can bring out risk to scalability. Stability must be addressed. The user experience is becoming more and more a focus User populations are exploding, and there's a very large focus, depending on industry, on your website and how it directly impacts your user experience. And of course, the perennial budget battle within the performance team, or for that matter, within IT in general. The budget for performance can certainly influence the ROI of your business applications. And part of budget is people and tools. And for people, is your organization mature enough to track where their time is being spent, how you allocate their time, and whether they're part of a project, part of a shared group. Does the group record their time as PE or performance to projects? Also for budgeting, performance labs are expensive, investing in hardware, software, and tools with constant pressure on keeping a lab up to date versus the trade-off of not having a lab. In some instances, it may be fairly easy to justify in the brokerage space or retail space, or it might not. And performance budgets cut across the company, across many groups, the software development lifecycle, the PE teams, operations, all have some impact to the performance budget. And finally, the team skills. I think we all wrestle at one point or another with finding the right team skills with a performance engineering bent, people who truly understand response time, scalability, performance and stability across the applications. And there's also a big difference between a performance tester, somebody who might be very good at executing load runner scripts, as opposed to somebody who might be able to help you truly engineer and triage a problem or actually solve and help get you to the root cause analysis. Because if your performance team can't find problems, they will distract your development team and forcing you to reallocate your resources along the way. So the next section is positioning PE under your business initiatives and where it fits. I think we're all more or less familiar with this type of diagram, where we have our business at the top. We want to understand what our business is and where we are and what the business goals are. So we like to start there and generate the non-functional requirements for key business functions, key business transactions. What's important to the business in terms of fast transactions, batch processing. There are still batch windows out there. There are still large batch systems that must meet timelines and windows in order to satisfy the business commitment. Once the business has come up with your non-functional requirements, it's all about communication downward to make sure that the enterprise architecture team understands what key critical response times are by transaction. And generally, the enterprise architecture team enables the rest of the organization with a set of guidelines, best practices, standards for meeting some non-functional requirements. So that then gets communicated down into the development teams when you design and build your applications. What are the goals? What are the targets? And what's the right use of performance there? Not all applications need performance engineering. Some do. And the ones that needed it last quarter might not need it this quarter. Moving from there, there's generally a performance team that can validate that the non-functional requirements and the business goals are measured and met through performance testing, and then transitioning into production operations where the application is measured in terms of how it's adhering to its SLAs that it was designed for, hopefully. And oops, getting ahead here. There we go. And then it's important to understand a feedback loop that not only does the production operations team understand the business transactions and their response time and their utilization, but they need to understand is the work pattern or usage pattern changing, and if it does, how to communicate that back to the business, back to the architects, that they're using the application differently. So for performance, connecting performance to business value, we have a number of upcoming slides here. And so in general, performance engineering, architecture, security, these are indirect expenses to our business. These take initial startup. They require an upfront investment in resources and people. And so if the business is spending money without a real direct connection to, okay, what do I really get for this? And so we came up with a few ideas, and I'm sure hopefully you may have others, but we can't come up with a few ways to connect your performance team to revenue, to outage costs, as a way to validate yourselves to the business. So a catchy one that the business can understand is about your website, your conversion rate, how fast response times can enable that, how being aware of the real-time response that people are experiencing can help in order to enable you to respond more quickly if there's an event that's slowing down your website. You know, a typical example around a marketing event, you know, might be a limited event, a day, 2 days, where you can track your number of website visitors per hour, the average order amount, and then your conversion rate, and establish baselines and trends so that over time you can develop trending to the conversion rate, to the benefit of that event, and then response time and behavior of your website application. And the way you can do this, I mean, if you take an example today, many retailers are aggressively pursuing mobile, enabling their web to be mobile, compatible and mobile friendly. That may force you to buy new tools in your performance team. It may force you to train. It may force you to develop new processes or skill sets. So you can tie that to revenue generation by saying, I'm going to increase my revenue if I make these investments in my infrastructure and in my team. And of course we have the outage cost of your website, and your performance team should be aware of this. They should know, you know, as a leader of a performance team, you should communicate to your team the value of an outage, the value of a marketing event that they're supporting. So the typical hourly outage cost you can develop either off your average or peak day of revenue, you know, what's your busiest hour during that day, and then some simple math just to get in the ballpark that says, you know, a 1 hour outage is worth so much to the business. And tying that back to your performance testing events and all your performance processes. As people are trending to the cloud, you know, evaluating cloud, I've heard a term called chaos monkey out there in order to anticipate outages and be more resilient with your systems to better respond to outages, and ultimately developing a profile for your application if components it depends on slow down, that you can then measure that and realize that there's a problem and you can potentially mitigate against that problem to do that. Deferring hardware purchases or upgrades, performance can help along an efficiency play. Now again, thinking back to our sharing diagram, we had the 5 components, sharing information across the organization. If you have a directional statement in your IT organization to reduce your consumption of resources for releases, in addition to your functional enhancements that you make, you can focus your IT organization to look at efficiency and effectiveness. And this works if you have more of a constant workload, you know, more of a captive audience. You know, if you won a number of healthcare claims processing, and your load stays steady for more or less a year until you get new clients, you can improve your system efficiency. You can look to design and build more efficient applications. It's about processing the same workload with fewer computing resources. And ultimately, it's a case that says you can defer hardware purchases. And you're not going to pull CPUs out. You're not going to pull servers out in general. But hopefully, you can push out purchasing into the next quarter or two. And then finally, my favorite, is the learning investment, where a business is interested in a new technology or product and they see value out of that if it works. And they need to evaluate it not only functionally but the non-functional requirements. Has this new product or tool worked at a scale that you have? Has it worked at a volume that your business has? And how can you look at that and evaluate that product for the non-functional requirements? In positioning this with your business as a learning investment or even an option, right? You may be willing to spend some money to learn new information that you haven't learned before or don't know to make a better decision. So for the technology, the performance team to define it that way, that says if you invest in this project, we'll learn new information, we'll validate that new tool, new release, new upgrade, SaaS vendor can definitely handle the load or not that we need to do. And it's important to communicate to the business that way, that says we're going to do this learning benchmark or learning custom performance test. And touching back on budgets a little bit here, budgets, people, environments, tools. Budgets are everywhere, and sometimes they seem to be nowhere. With shared services in IT, you've got a central IT group servicing a business unit. They may have a level set budget. Often performance tasks and activities can be funded by a particular project. A business unit may fund it, or ultimately at the enterprise is where they may be funded. And budgets are planned generally months in advance for the upcoming year. They can also be readjusted, and knowing the adjustment process, knowing the exception process is very important from a performance team. For instance, for the mobile case, who pays for new training? Who pays for new tools? Is it the project that happened to be the first one using performance, using the mobile advantage? Or is it the enterprise or the business unit that believes they should invest in that, and therefore that's going to be budgeted separately outside of the project? And also, who would pay for APM type tools? You want to measure your customer experience, and that's a business focus. Where should that be funded from? The business unit, the enterprise, or again, in the past, it's usually been the first project that breaks through, pays the burden for all those new things that everybody else gets to use. And so just a summary in business, again, looking at us as an indirect expense and how we can connect to direct expenses quickly. Revenue producing projects, it's efficiency and cost. And a lot of it is reducing risk and fear of the unknown, right? Systems today are very, very complex. They're very interdependent. There are third parties involved. And if you are not managing and you're not watching that system and designing for SLAs, there's a lot of places where slow and gotchas can be introduced into your environment. And then finally, increasing your options for jumping on out in front to evaluate tools and technologies that'll enable you to exceed your service level agreements. Communication. IT and business communication is always a sore spot in many industries. Aligning the business, talking with the business. Why are they investing in a performance team? And you really need to bring your performance team into the business, right? They should be aware that they have such a team and the value of that, how it supports your growth, how it manages your risk, how it increases their efficiency, how they're reducing costs or keeping the systems up and outages out of the way. And visibility, reporting out of the performance team in terms of what value they brought, how they achieved service level agreements, and how they're sharing information across the organization. Another key differentiation, or I guess to understand when you're speaking with your business and as a performance engineering group or team leader, interacting with an internal business unit or an external revenue-generating business unit is a very different conversation. For instance, internal business units, compliance, legal, HR, talent management, payroll, document management, finance, they can be very small groups, all the way to the enterprise in terms of people in the enterprise interacting with these systems, but they're cost-focused. And many times, internal systems are simply good enough, where they, as long as they're up most of the time or some, threshold, everybody's happy. However, you can make the case that, if the systems slow down enough to interfere with the workflow, that may result in an increased headcount. So if you're not measuring and monitoring those systems, you might be missing opportunities to make sure that the workflow is not impacted by the response time of the systems. Internal systems also use third-party products more often. They use SaaS services. And when selling to the PE, to the internal business units, it's generally about lower costs, doing more with less, consolidation of the servers, because the user population typically stays the same and stays constant. As opposed to external business units, where you show them you can process more orders, generally you can get more budget. Help them view their application portfolio to make sure that they're going to spend money on the right applications. Right? Not every application needs performance testing. And some applications can just simply be monitored in production, and then make sure they don't deviate from the SLAs. And so for performance, aligning with the business goals, so we all need to understand what our business wants to do today, next quarter, next year. What type of growth and where are the business plans calling for growth? For instance, claims processing, winning a new client can, almost double or certainly a significant increase in your processing. And there's retail brokerage, right, expecting trading volume to increase, or the number of conditional orders to increase as volatility increases. And over the last couple of years, we've seen more flash or marketing events. Go to a website such as Gilt or Rue La La, where they have their 11 o'clock sale with limited items. You log in at 11 o'clock and the systems are up, they're ready, but they might be out of merchandise within the half hour, so a very high spike going on there for that type of event. And so that forces other companies that didn't design their systems for that to bolt on marketing events like that, where the systems may not have been tested, they may not have been validated at a 10x factor. I mean, everybody has a peak factor, but they might not. So the performance team is kind of in a catch-up and defensive mode to meet with the business. And businesses typically align and behave differently across the value disciplines. You look at customer intimacy, which is about website experience, knowing your customer. Netflix is very good at knowing you, too much in some instances. They predict things that I didn't know I really liked. And so the systems behave differently and your investments behave differently. Operational excellence, that's about transactional efficiency. Typically you're in a competitive market where the low-cost transaction wins. And so your performance goals need to be a little different. And then finally, businesses can make it on innovation, where they're very focused on innovation. So you may do more learning investments or more options-based approach to assessing products and evaluating them for business value. Oh. All right, here we go. So I thought I'd throw up an example some might be able to relate to, some might not. So the business asks for that marketing event, big marketing event, telling everybody they're going to be here, come get your stuff. We have 750,000 registered customers in our database, and we told them all to show up. We're expecting, our business plan says, maybe half of them will get there, we're hoping. And so where IT gets into trouble, they start talking about virtual users. No think time, hot databases, but okay. Max response times might have gotten very nasty, but the average is good. And by the way, we really couldn't test all of it because we didn't have the right size system. So we're not sure, which isn't a good answer for the business, right? Our business partners like options, right? Okay, what is my risk to this question of handling this load, and what are my options for solving that risk? Oh, there we go. Alternative dialogue. So maybe we can start here to reshape the dialogue. So it's the same question. However, we might say that we see that that we have risk to the event. We've done some successful scalability tests before we realize that the response time will be poor. We have a couple of options for you that you need to decide on. We could spend more money because we need some more servers and equipment. Did you factor that into your ROI when you did this event? Option B, we've all done this. We've stolen hardware from other applications for the event, and the business makes the decision that it's okay that for that 24-hour or 48-hour period, those other systems are in a great situation where they might violate their service level agreements. And option C, they like this one usually, right? Gracefully tell your customers, we're full, why don't you come back later? But the ones in the system will have a good experience. Again, a business decision for that. Under the covers, you might need another a license for 5,000, low runner virtual users. You might need more servers to start that to support that load. You might need more enhanced monitoring for your end users, your real user experience. And in some cases, marketing, my friend Frank here, may have written a check the system just simply can't cache, and they might have to postpone that marketing event. So I think that's very important, for the senior leadership in IT and for the performance engineers to be able to make that transition and get away from the technical, my database, my servers, my applications, and more focused on what are the business risks that we're trying to solve. And if we are experiencing and focused on customer excellence, what can we do to ensure that the performance team is aligned with customer excellence in monitoring? And there have been changes in monitoring along the way. We're moving from monitoring servers. We still do that. We still need to know if they're hot or cold. However, we now need to look at it really from the business transaction level, right? How is my order working? How's the order placement experience? How's the order confirmation experience working? Is it getting slower? Is it getting faster for the business to provide that? And so that leads us to the next level in modeling the business, modeling the transactions, where we have, the transactions matter to the business people. As I alluded to before, it's moving from the infrastructure to the application transaction response time, and ultimately to the business services and the workflow for the complete user experience. And the user experience can vary, and we try to work with the business to get away from, well, it needs to be under 3 seconds. It's still a guideline, and in some instances it must be. However, there are phases that a user goes through when it's talking or using a system, where they're satisfied that the response time is okay. They're tolerating that, okay, I'm a little slow, but I'm not too far behind. Then they get into frustrated, where the system starts to impact their workflow, and then ultimately abandonment of the site. So how do you, making sure that your business users having that excellent experience? We kind of talked about that, the components around design, setting the goals from the business, the non-functional requirements, architectural principles that enable performance, making sure your budgets are aligned with those so that you can invest in your performance engineering team across the organization, knowing where all the budgets are, and also working with your internal users to make sure that they have the right experience on their internal systems. And we do that, again, with service level, user experience, drive revenue, and connect revenue to performance. Be first. Watch user experience over time, starting to trend the user experience to locate the response time trends based on the system utilization. Where is the transaction spending its time, if it takes 5 seconds or 3 seconds. And minimize disruptions is what it's all about when you're on a retail website. Locate that root cause, right? Minimize that disruption. Instead of being out an hour, hopefully you're out minutes in order to identify the slow parts of the transaction.
Well, thank you, Walter. And I think you both agree, as he talked about in this presentation, is what really matters to end users is how that application responds from their point of view, not necessarily the way it looks at from some synthetic robot or what the SLA numbers look like or the database response times are always about. And this is really why Correlsense offers its SharePath product line, which provides visibility into transactions for performance engineering. And that's really for every transaction and every hop across that transaction from the end user's computer all the way through to the data center. And the amazing thing is it's the technology platform that Correlsense offers in SharePath provides a really simple and straightforward installation path so any organization can improve its performance engineering in a really quick and easy way, helping you being able to fix and identify issues quickly and communicate the value to your business stakeholders and application owners. But don't take our word for it. Gartner has looked at Correlsense SharePath product, and Gartner does agree that SharePath provides an automated modeling of application execution path, an easy deployment model with really minimal impact on the overall production performance of your application from this monitoring. There are two members of the SharePath family. First of all, SharePath RUM for transactions that going up to and outside of your data center, and then SharePath Data Center, which can follow those transactions all the way through to the terminal point of the transaction. It's provided as one product platform, which has an easy upgrade path, so there's no need to install multiple products, and it's something that you can check out yourself. Check out yourself for free. SharePath RUM, Real User Monitoring product, is available for free for download from realusermonitoring.com. You can, again, download it in minutes and have it up in less than a day and start monitoring transactions on your website or any other web-enabled application. Now, Walter's going to talk a little bit about collaborative consulting.
Collaborative, we are a professional services company. We've been around the Boston marketplace and East Coast since 1999, focusing on performance engineering, architecture, and our consulting services with business enablement for organizational change and business architecting, information management for business intelligence, data integration, technology enablement with architecture and performance engineering, and large program and project management. And so we have we're a very experienced team. We consider ourselves more like a diamond-shaped professional services organization as opposed to a more of the traditional pyramid shape. We have experienced people who have been out there and done that, very pragmatic approach to solving problems, an integrated approach. We believe in the intersection of business and technology. We've developed some methodologies and processes to help accelerate those services, and we believe we provide tremendous value to our customers.
Great. Well, this is the portion of the program where we open up for questions. I don't see any questions on the chat, but if you do have them, please feel free to enter them now into the chat window on your GoToMeeting screen. If you're interested in learning more about either collaborative consulting services or Correlsense's products, please feel free to send us an email at info@correlsense.com or check out the demos page on correlsense.com. I also mentioned you can download Correlsense's free Real User Monitoring Express Edition, which can monitor actual production servers. That can be downloaded at realusermonitoring.com. And with that, I see we don't have any questions. So on behalf of Collaborative Consulting, Walter, thank you again.
Thank you. You're welcome.
And myself, Frank Gaze, thank you for joining us, and have a great day.